don't have the clicker things. Oh, back. Yes, we have a. Do you have keys? Oh, no, sorry again. All right.
No.
Okay. Hey.
Okay.
Hey.
Takes a second.
Shot.
Okay, thank you. Before anything. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to talk about Artemis II. I'm hoping many of you followed the entire mission because I felt like it was a reality show that like absolutely had to like 24/7 watch and be like, aren't you astronauts sleeping? Oh my God, when are they gonna wake up? Like, what am I gonna do until then, right? Like it was, I think this was one of those missions where I'm glad they broadcasted everything all the time because then you can, I mean, astronauts are on ISS, have been for 20 plus years continuously, right? But it's not the same kind of connection as we had with these folks. So what I'm going to do is I've kind of taken my own interpretation and interest in this mission, and I'll talk about that because I can be here for days if I'm going to talk about everything that happened in the mission. Because you literally need to watch that, 10-day live, and I guess also before and after the mission, to get over.
We need to switch to share.
Oh,
Did I not?
hey.
That's your share. So, sorry to interrupt, Parshati.
No.
Stop. Start. I apologize.
It's okay. All right.
It should work.
There we go.
All right. Okay. So you guys have seen the second slide a few times, but but what I'm going to do is give you guys a little bit of a background if you didn't glue yourself to the TV like I did for the 10 days that this mission was happening. And I guess still, is every time the astronauts go out and talk about their experience, I feel like I'm watching them on YouTube. Just very weird. I'm pretty sure that psychological attachment needs to be studied in some form at this point, right?
I know where you're coming from.
Right? Because I feel like, I don't know, it was a different experience. I don't watch reality TV much, so probably this is my first experience. But anyways, I'll do a little bit of kind of background. We'll walk through kind of the 10 days. And then a little bit, because of my background is in planetary science and astronomy, so I'll give a little bit of kind of a, my take on exciting things that I found during the mission. So if you remember last year, if I was giving a talk, this is what it would have been. Artemis I, it happened in 2022, where we sent this new rocket around the moon to kind of test and make sure that, if we were to send astronauts on it, that they would survive. All the systems are good to go, especially because these missions are happening after 50 plus years, which is when I was not alive, to see what happened. So I was really excited about that, to be able to see astronauts go around the moon. So 2022 test went well. They're like, okay, we're good to kind of send astronauts, and it's 2026. They were ready to go. We had the announcement in 2023 who the astronauts were going to be. They had like a few years of training. But the idea was that after the Artemis II mission, we would have Artemis III, which is where the astronauts would land. But then a week before Artemis II happens, they were like, oh, hold on, we have a new plan. And I'll talk about a new plan at the end. But things changed. Like it does with the administration down south, everything is changing all the time. And interestingly, as I was doing research for this presentation, not a lot of their web pages are updated. So it still says Artemis III moon landing. And I'm like, wait, budget cuts? Not enough comms people? I don't know what's happening with you. But yeah, their websites are like outdated. So I'll talk about what the next plan is, what the astronauts are going to be, and when can we have these regular, hopefully months of visit from astronauts to the moon. So just to give you a little bit of a background, this is a new system, the Space Launch System that NASA developed, and it's very interestingly the size of, obviously this is not working, the size of the tower at the Parliament in Ottawa. So I've been there and I still cannot fathom how large that is. Someday maybe we'll get to see it in a museum. But it's pretty tall. However, the crew module itself is pretty tiny. It's like being in a camper van with like 4 other people, and that includes a toilet. So very cramped space. But it's interesting that they built this so that the astronauts could stay up to 21 days. I think 10 days, I think is like, I don't know. I like my own personal space is like too much. So like 21 days. And I think the astronauts for the next mission, when I talk about it, I'll talk about how it might end up being that long. So, you know, we'll see if they survive or not. But anyways, this one, as it lands back down, it has 3 sets of parachutes. And if you had watched the video, you could hear the parachutes going off, which is super interesting, having the live footage from inside. And then they took this route, which I think in general, like if you look at how the physics works, pretty understandable. You go off of, you launch off Florida here, and then you come up and do like 1 round around the Earth. And then what they really wanted to do was to actually test out whether or not you can separate the system and go back and join it. So that's where the number 3 up here, they actually tested out this operation is called proximity operations. So this is where, if you have seen Chris Hadfield's video, where he basically on the International Space Station, you have cargo ship coming in, they're docking with each other. So that's exactly what they tried, but they tried it with a propulsion system. And they wanted to do that because that is literally what the next mission is going to be. So this was kind of a smaller test, because when they eventually go onto the moon and land, they will have to shoot up to an existing spacecraft, dock with it, and then come back to it. So this was kind of a small test towards that operation. They did it successfully. And then I'll talk about each of the day. But basically they went around Earth and then used the gravity to actually, and a little bit of fuel, to actually go on to around the moon and then back to Earth. And it's really interesting that this entire thing took only 10 days. What I really was excited, I guess, was the first few days until you get to the moon and they were like, oh, okay, now you're gonna come back. And technically that's all it was. I mean, pretty sure for astronauts, there's a lot of work both ways, going there and coming back, because there's preparing for landing, but path's pretty simple. They didn't really have to do much in terms of navigation because they were using Earth's gravity to do that. So our 4 astronauts who went to the moon, or around the moon, close to the moon. Reed Weissman, he is, I'm gonna use my hand, the commander. All except Jeremy have been to space before. So all of these are kind of veterans in terms of having been to space. Here's Christina Cook, we have Victor Glover, and Jeremy. So Reed Weissman was the commander, Victor Glover, pilot, and then Christina and Jeremy were the mission specialists. Now, every mission has backups for a reason. If they, get sick, something happens, one of the crew members or a couple of crew members cannot make it, you have to have backup. And so in this particular case, very crucial. It took them a few years of training to actually get to that place for 10 days. And so 2 folks who were backup, obviously, hopefully everyone knows Dr. Jenny Gibbons, Canadian astronaut, and then Andre Douglas, who's an American astronaut who is the backup. So we knew ahead of time we had a seat. So even if Jeremy, for any reason, I'm glad he got to go, because God Lord, he has been waiting for a long time to get to space. But we had Jenny in case he couldn't go for any reason. There was going to be a Canadian on the crew. So a little bit about Jeremy. He's a London-born, Ingersoll raised, and he actually started his journey of becoming an astronaut very young, right here in London. He was part of the Air Cadet program, and he talks a lot. If you've ever heard him talk about his kind of life, he talks a lot about that program and how that helped him to kind of gain confidence. And he became a private pilot and a glider at 17. I don't know what I was doing. I don't think I even knew what a glider pilot was when I was 17. His background is actually in space science and physics. So he has a master's from Royal Military College. And it's really interesting to see because most of the times you see there are a lot of engineers, who are becoming astronauts and medical doctors. So it's good to kind of see other sciences also represented in that. All right, so he was actually a fighter pilot before he got chosen to be an astronaut. So behind him is the, I think it's CF-16 or 18? 18, CF-18, that he used to fly, and he was based out of Alberta. So for many years, he was part of, he talks about that training as, being in Air Force and how they trained him to be an astronaut. And then in 2009, he got picked with David St. Jacques to be part of the astronaut crew for Canada. And so since 2009, he has just been waiting to go to space, like a very long time. That's determination. And obviously, once you get selected to be an astronaut, you have to undergo training for 2 years before you could be, considered like a full astronaut. You could be assigned a mission. So he had to do everything, even though he has a physics background, he had to learn everything, including, medical things, because you got to operate at some point in space. You got to know how to do that. He was also a cave nut. And before, for many years, until, I would say, until I was in grad school, I didn't know that was a thing. I did not know cave knot was a thing. But astronauts trained under very, extreme conditions a lot. So cave and underwater is, 2 examples of doing that. And so this is an example of him. I think this was in Italy, where he basically spent, I think it was a week or two in the cave. So 24/7, not going and coming back, but just living there, which is really interesting. And then he was also an aquanaut, because why not, right? Where he spent, I think it was 8 days in Florida, where they did have an underground habitat, which they no longer actually have. They closed down the program. And then last but not least, he also was the first Canadian to be the teacher of the astronauts. So he taught the astronaut class while waiting for the assignment for so long. And he was a Capcom operator. So basically, he's the voice between the astronauts in space and the folks on the ground. So very diverse careers, he has very diverse experiences, and kind of primed for this mission. I'm so glad he was picked. Now let's talk a little bit about the mission itself. We had the launch date was February? I think that's when we had the launch party. I think kept getting delayed. And I launched on April 1st. I think that was perfect because it coincided with a long weekend. That's when they had the lunar flyby, and I was glued to the TV the entire time. But the idea was that they spent 10 days in space, covered around 1.1 million kilometers. They also had 5 science experiments that they conducted, and I'll talk about that in a bit. And they ended up landing on the 10th, which, again, very emotional to make sure that he's coming back home. What I think was the best part of all of this was that on the crew on the ground, Jenny was the one who was leading the Capcom. So, and the interesting tidbit is that she's also going to be leading Capcom for the next mission that's coming up as well. But she was the voice between, there were a couple other people too, but she was one of the 3 people between the astronauts and the ground crew. So that was really interesting. All right. So let's talk about the astronauts. So I'm just going to start a couple days before the journey. So they do have to go into quarantine, because you want to make sure you're, sick and getting infections from other people. So their entire families had to quarantine. If you follow Jeremy's wife on social media. She was posting all about it. Or it's like as a family, how they had to like make sure that they were like, you know, not meeting other people, etc. And they flew actually down to Florida. So they all live in Houston. But they flew down in Florida in like fighter pilot planes. I thought that was super cool because their families got to fly private. I saw the video and I was like, oh, that's cool. But the astronauts themselves got to fly on this really cool fighter jet. And I think one of the things I wanted to mention, I think this was one of the first times when I saw crew holding the 0G indicator. So each mission, they carry a 0G indicator, and this one was actually designed by a second grader. And it's inspired from that Earthrise image from the Apollo era, which I think was so fun. I think it was this week where they released his video with Victor Glover, where the kid is finally getting to hold the real 0Z because, you know, there are now plushy toys and whatnots out of it. But he actually got to hold the one that actually went to space, which I thought was, I don't know, really cool. So on March 27th, they landed in Florida. Again, they're quarantining in the astronaut crew quarters. One of the things that they have as a tradition is that before they all go to space, or at least launch, they all kind of have their patch that's signed and it kind of stays in the crew quarters kind of forever. And so this was, I thought that was a really cool picture of like Jeremy finally getting his time to go to space and him signing that, and that's going to stay, you know, however long NASA will exist and the crew quarters is used. So that was April 1st, and then they had to go through a really long process of basically being suited up because, you know, you got to spend a few hours before you actually get launched to space. So you cannot just walk out and be like, I'm hungry, I want you to drink water. It's all actually part of your suit, including wearing diapers because you're going to be in that thing for like a few hours at least. So they all got suited up, and then they do that iconic walk that astronauts get to do before they go to space. And I thought this was a really cool moment where they got to just meet like their close family members and friends. And finally, like it started feeling like it was happening because I think they were so delayed it didn't feel like you know, it was going to happen. I do want to point out how awkward it looks to have all of these things attached to you. I mean, it would make sense when you're in space to have that, but like walking with that, I found the astronauts to be like awkwardly walking, and I thought that was really funny. But they were obviously super excited. Christina, out of all, I always felt like, yes, let's go. So they launch from Florida. It only takes a couple minutes for them to get to space, and then they really had to kind of get to work. I think this one is like the slow-mo version. It's going to take forever, but I think it was really exciting to see how many people actually traveled down, including there was a huge Canadian delegate from the government that actually also got to go down, family members, people in from CSA, etc. got to go to work, and also have pleasure at the same time watching Jeremy launch.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, yeah. And I thought this is really cool, also nerve-wracking at the same time because I'm someone who watched, you know, helping a traveler go through kind of the back end of like coming back. So for me, both like launch and coming back to like gets my heart beat up even right now, just watching it. But anyway, it's really exciting. It takes a couple of minutes for them to kind of get to space. And then basically they're shedding off a lot of the stages. What was really interesting, again, like what I was mentioning before, this is a little bit of better picture that few hours into their mission, they were basically trying out. So they had manually took over. So most of the actually piloting is really done from the ground. Even though Victor Glover is there, that's really when there's something happening and you need someone to take over. But for this particular prox ops, that's what it's called, proximity operations, where you're getting close to something else. In this case, it was actually one of the propulsion stage. and then you try and like see if you can get close. Okay, the idea is at some point they would like dock with it. But that was actually done manually by Victor Glover and Reed Weissman as a commander. So that went successfully, but they didn't have to stop there. They now had to like go and check whether everything is working or not. And that is happening as they're going around the Earth. So this is the reason why they have an orbit around the Earth, because they now need to go and, you know, make sure everything is working before they decide to actually go to the moon. So one of the things that I thought that was really cool was this picture of Earth that they took as they were given this advice. Okay, now you can go ahead and like go to the moon. Everything checks out. All the systems are good to go. Space toilet was still a problem. So I will hit on that in a bit, but space toilet was an issue throughout the 10 days. Thankfully, not a major issue, but there were times where they were like told not to use the toilet, which is weird when it's like you're in a crowded space, you cannot just walk out. You're like, yeah, don't use the toilet. I'm like, okay. But I thought this picture was like iconic in terms of like you're looking back at Earth as you're like leaving to go. This is only day 2. So one of the cool things that I want to mention is that these astronauts have gotten trained on how to photograph the moon, because obviously most of them don't have that training, or who knows, maybe are interested or not. But they were actually like working with photographers to practice on how to take pictures of the moon. And then they took Nikon, which was like, I'm a Canon person, so I kind of felt bad, but they were basically trained on how to take pictures of the moon. So a lot of the science that was going to happen when they were going to get closest to the moon was using their camera. So they were trained for that part. Interesting training that they just hung a moon ball and just like, asked them to photograph that. This is very different in a different setting, but okay. And here's an interesting note I will make is that in here at the back, that's Jenny. So she was the backup, just like Andre. They had to do exactly every training that all these astronauts did. So you will see them in any of the training photos, you will always see them in the background or with the astronauts because they have to learn the same things.
They should have turned the lights off.
Yeah, right? That's exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, how are, like, it's not even the right way. The shadows fall on them. Okay, fine. I'm being very picky, but that was my first question. I was like, that's not how it's going to look, but they're probably just getting started, I hope. And then the next picture, which I think is also like shared very widely everywhere, is this iconic picture of Earth. Pretty cool because you know the North and the South Pole, which again, kudos to their photography skills. I don't know why the picture looks gray here because when I downloaded it, might have just been suppressed, but it's a really cool picture. You want to download. And I think this one is Saturn, if I'm not wrong. So I think that one is Saturn. Anyways, day 3, they were on their way to the moon. They had done the injection, and they were ready to get there. They were preparing on what they would be doing as they would come close to the surface of the moon. There's a lot of preparation that went in. One of the things they also did on the 3rd day was talk to Canadians. So if any of us who were like super into it, like stayed up super late at night, I think it was like midnight or something. There were some kids also out there who got to ask questions. So that was pretty cool, but super late at night. So they did quite a lot of these, couple for Canada, but a lot more for US as well. And then on day 5, Jeremy was given the gold pin. So when astronauts graduate from their astronaut class, the 2 years that they go through the training, they get a silver pin. So that's like, hey, you graduated, you're now an astronaut who will be assigned to a mission. Jeremy was the only one who, for the first time, had been to space. So when you go to space first time, you get a gold pin. And so the crew surprised him with a gold pin on day 5. That was pretty cool. I couldn't find any pictures of the close-up, but I'm pretty sure it's someday when he comes to London, we can ask, hey, can we see your gold? Because I think that would be really cool. Yeah. And then day 6, closest to the moon. I think Arthurize from Apollo era is super popular. This is probably the Artemis era iconic picture of the Earth in the background and then moon. And now that picture I think is stunning. Like that's like looking at the moon with our telescope, but like at high magnification. But they are just doing that by in their spacecraft. And there's a lot of science that they did. And I'll show some pictures of the science stuff that they did, which I thought was pretty cool.
Is that a picture right there?
This one? This is from their cameras. And one of the cool things, or I guess it's just how the group is of the 4 astronauts, they're so close to each other, they decided to not have their names on the photo. So generally when an astronaut is taking a picture, it would say this astronaut / NASA, right? This one, they decided as a team that all the photos are like Artemis II mission photos and not by individual astronauts. So we don't know who took this picture. They probably know, but we don't know. It's just someone from the 4 actually took that photo. And one of the unique things about launching on April 1st, which wouldn't have happened if they were, let's say, launched in February or March, there were a couple of different attempts, they wouldn't have been able to see an eclipse from their path. And this is another one of those things that like blows your mind away, where we are like so used to seeing it from Earth. But like seeing it from there, I think moon looks very different in terms of like, it looks 3D to be in the picture. And I know like how there are so many more photos. These are just the one that I picked. But like just that experience. And I know that Jeremy couldn't see the last major North American eclipse that happened in 2024 because he was in Niagara Falls with the CSA crew and they were clouded out. So he couldn't see.
Yeah.
He didn't see one in his backyard, but he had to go to the moon and got to see one. So I thought that was a cool thing. I don't know if many people know that. I just know that because I knew the CSA team and how upset that they were in Niagara Falls and they didn't get to see it.
Parshati.
Yeah.
How can the moon be eclipsed and still be a crescent?
So that is a really cool, I was going to talk about that when you asked. So that shine that you're seeing on the side over here is actually Earth's shine. That's Earth reflecting its light onto the moon, which is something, again, never like in a million years you would think that would be happening. And they actually described, if you listen to their audio descriptions that they have as they're telling the scientists what they're seeing, they talk about how they were just blown away by the fact that you can see a part of the moon they didn't expect that to see. So Earthshine is the answer. And then this is another one of those pictures where Earthshine is more prominent than the last one as well. And so I thought that was pretty cool. And actually over here, this one is Saturn and this one is Mars. So they not only got to see the eclipse, they also got to see some planets alongside it, which is super cool as well. And they obviously carried the eclipse glasses with them, because that's safety first. And then obviously when they were closer to the moon, they were doing some science. So one of the important things that they were there for was to actually check out the Oriental Basin and the area that's not visible from Earth. Okay. And one of the reasons for that is in future landings or in future when we have astronauts land, they want astronauts to land on the south. And that's the area where we have had, missions that have mapped that area, but we never had humans actually look at that area. So this is one of the kind of key goals of this mission, was to actually check out that area. And so here's an example of, I'm pretty sure if I have my lunar geologist friend, they would be going bonkers of looking at this image. But this is, if I'm pronouncing correct, celestial crater right here at the edge of another crater. And this is where they're looking at options for potential landing sites for these astronauts. So they were mapping, observing, because you need relatively flat land to land on, and then probably also traverse. So they're looking for spots for future sites. And then this was, as a scientist, probably the most exciting part. So let's see if this works. I don't know if the audio will work. Let's see. I'm gonna turn on. So what was happening? So audio is not working, but I can talk about it. So many of you, if you have observed moon for a while, or are someone who observes moon all the time, you may have seen impact flashes. So these are meteoroids basically hitting the surface of the moon. Because it doesn't have an atmosphere like that of Earth, it's the surface. And here is the science lead. So that's Dr. Kelsey Young, and that's Angelina Garcia. She's the science officer. They are hearing from the astronauts. The astronauts said, oh, we saw not one, two, but 3 impact flashes. And they said like it was color, like they could see color for it happening. And so obviously the scientists are going bonkers. They're like, oh my God, we had someone actually describe that to us. So can you describe what is happening or what you're seeing? And this is the science room that they had. These are all the scientists sitting there, and basically everyone going. I heard that they saw those. They also said that they saw color to the moon, which is sometimes where you can see when you have images from different missions where you like up the saturation a lot. You can see that it's not natural for those images to have that, but astronauts could actually see the color, which is, you're like, but the moon is gray. It's actually not. That's what they said, that it's not gray. It actually has hues of greens and browns, which to me was also another thing that was exciting as well. I'll not play the rest, but it was basically scientists getting excited, which I think is really cool. Next. Work. Oh. No, that's not what I meant. Okay.
That's the case by state.
Okay. Nope. All right, let's do this. Yeah. No. Okay, I have no idea why this is not working. Okay. Oh, that's not what I meant. Sorry, this is not my laptop. I can fix that. Can I go like, oh, here. Oh, sorry. I stopped.
I'll take care of it.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I screwed that up.
No problem. These things happen. Share.
Perfect. Okay, I'll try not to like do it again, but I think I have still one more video for that.
Can we see it? We can select.
Okay. Next. Okay. All right. And I'll talk a little bit more about the science in a couple of slides, but I wanted to finish the 10 days that they had, which really passed the moon. They didn't really do much. I mean, not something that was to me. They were really just getting over the whole 1 day of science observing and lunar observing, and then really prepping for coming back, because they had to rehearse all the things that they were going to do and how they were going to do, because again, these folks are going to be then kind of the helpers and the test, I guess, teachers for the next next set of astronauts that are going to go, so that they can kind of explain the process. They did do some public PR events, and so one of them was talking to Prime Minister Kearney on day 7. And I think there were some really cool bits, if you want to just like Google out of that conversation and other conversations as well. I really found that I think this was Jeremy's first time going to space, so he was really excited about like just doing things like eating floating food and trying different things. And then one of the other things that they mentioned, and I did mention earlier, was that when they went behind the moon, there was 40 minutes where they didn't have any uplink or downlink, so they couldn't have communications. And during that time, they actually had maple cookies. So, you know, very Canadian thing. Oh, I'm not going to talk to Earth, but I'm going to hang out and have some, you know, Canadian biscuits. So, and they mentioned it, seem to be mentioning it every time they're at an event. So, also really cool. One of the things that I found really distinct in some of the things that Jeremy has said is this image. So this is an image of the Milky Way taken during the mission on April 7th. And he said he has seen Milky Way many times from Earth, but this was the first time that he felt like he was seeing Milky Way in 3D. Like he could really figure out the stars that were further away and the stars that were closer. And I was like, oh, I've never heard anyone say that before. So that was pretty neat. And I guess if we ever get a chance, like we want to know a little bit more what he means. But yeah, pretty cool picture from space with a Nikon camera. I don't know which lens they used, but I wish that they had put that information out there. I tried to find it, but nope. But it was a Nikon camera.
So.
And then I think I have a video. Maybe. Let's see if that works. And then this was basically, again, the voice isn't working, but their kind of day of coming back. So they were preparing to come back. It only takes really a few minutes to go through that atmosphere and land. What was really cool, again, is that zero gravity indicator. And if you listen to that kind of them coming down, you can hear everything that is happening. And I actually didn't realize how noisy the inside of the spacecraft was, because every time there was, you know, a small kind of fuel that was given out just to correct their positions, you could hear that happening in the spacecraft. Every time there's like a parachute comes out, you could hear it and like they could feel the jerks. I knew that could happen, but this was kind of great to see that inside of you and hear what exactly is happening. The actually seems super calm.
Some of the sounds that you heard when it was coming through,
Mm-hmm.
it was like a grinding. Was that be an expansion and contraction of the craft itself?
I think it was craft hitting the atmosphere. So it's really that, you know, it's kind of resisting in some
Yeah,
ways,
because
right?
you'd hear it, and then you would.
Yeah.
Then you wouldn't.
Yeah, and you would see that the craft is also like a lot of the times going like this. And so again, sometimes they have to correct the position. I don't think they had to do very much in this one, but that itself, like you could hear when that happens in their video. So they landed successfully, pretty nerve-wracking. And I think Victor Glover said that was the best part when he landed back. It was the best part of the mission, which I was like, dude, you were an astronaut, but okay. I would think the best part would be like being close to the moon, but I guess it's different for everyone. And then this was really interesting too, that they actually put them onto like a helicopter, and it took an hour and a half before all of that could be like worked out. So they just had to hang back. Again, this is why they're wearing those spacesuits, is because, you know, they need to be just hanging out in those suits for a long time. And then they were taken onto a ship where basically a lot of the medical aspects of their journey actually began. Oh, we did it again. Okay, maybe now. Yes, okay. This time I did it. All right. Before I go on to talk a little bit about science, I don't know how long I've been talking, but I wanted to highlight Jenny's contribution to this mission. I think it's been understated, like how much she had to do. She's not only training to be a backup astronaut, like that was her prime job. For any second she had to step in and be on that spacecraft, but she also had a lot of other roles. So one of the other roles was she was kind of a support for the family. So as a, you know, Jeremy is going, something will happen, you need to have someone who you know you should be talking to all the time. So Jenny was with Jeremy's family before he was like about to like launch, or I think until after he launched, and then she had to rush back to Houston to be part of the ground control. But she was really there to be that person for any questions that the family might have when obviously Jeremy is in the astronaut quarters, quarantining and all of that. The other thing she was part of was the closeout team. So when I said that it took them hours to actually put on those suits, you know, walk that awkward walk onto that iconic, you know, walk that they take and get onto the spacecraft, she was one of the members who was helping them suit up, and then in the integrity module itself doing all the testing to make sure that, you know, their mics are working, all of the computers are working fine, all of those testing. She was one of the team members who was doing that. The other thing was she was an astronaut support person as well. So this was before the astronauts were launching. She'd be like the point of contact. And then during the mission, because that was all not enough, she was the Capcom. So she obviously has training to do that already, but she had to be certified to do that for the Artemis mission. So she's the first Canadian to be certified to be a Capcom person for Artemis itself. And like I said before, she will be leading the Capcom team for the next mission. Okay. All right. And I think I had a short video about her, which was basically when she created this thing you may have heard a lot when she said amaze, amaze, amaze. And now it's just like a thing that everyone says, just like copy Moonjoy. I don't know if you've all heard about it, but that was a thing that she said amaze, amaze, amaze. And then the science officer said copy Moonjoy. So that was like copy, we hear you, what you said, excited about what you're telling about the moon, but she said Moonjoy. So it has become a really cool phrase. All right, let's talk about the science. So I showed you one image before, but I really wanted to show you what they were looking at. So this is the part of the moon that we generally see, the red patches if you look up and whatnot. This is the part that we don't get to see. This is the Oriental Basin. Basically, you see a huge crater right here. And some of these other images, these are all taken by the Artemis II mission astronauts. This is likely where they would want to land. So they're really heavily mapping it. They're really looking at, you know, what are the places that would be great? What are the craters? They also want to look at craters that probably have, you know, material from deeper in the surface. So deeper craters, but then also looking for like lunar ice. So that will be a combination that the geologists will be working out now that they have the, you know, impressions from the astronauts, and as they plan where they're going to land in a few years. I want to put that in quotation, in a few years. So, yeah.
Are they still using the LRO to map it?
Yeah. So a lot of these, the whole observing campaign was planned using LRO stuff. So
What's LRO?
Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter submission. That basically is mapped most of it. Yeah. I also wanted to show these two craters. So one of the really cool things that the astronauts did, so Commander Reed Weissman lost his wife to cancer. I think it was in 2021 or 2022. And the rest of the crew decided to dedicate a crater after her. So over here you can see two tiny craters. The bottom one is the one that they have named, or are going to propose the name Carol, which is the name of the wife of Reed Weissman. And I think it was interesting to see the conversation about how craters are named. People didn't know, and they just thought like, oh, you just give a name to a crater and then that's what it's going to be called. Well, there's a whole IAU process that happens that people completely forgot about. So there was a lot of discussion amongst like the scientists about like, oh wait, they just named the crater, but that's really not how it works. So anyway, so it's proposed to be the name of the crater. The other science objectives of the mission were really to understand astronauts' health. So, you know, this is first time after 50 years, we are sending astronauts around the moon, just further away from the lovely cocoon we have around Earth, which is, you know, really helps us to prevent us from intense radiation, but the astronauts are going to go for 10 days for this mission, and in the future for longer time. This means we don't know what's going to happen to their health, so we need to like figure this out. So they had 5 different kind of objectives, or let's say experiments that they were doing with this mission. So the first one was called Archer, which is really like, you know, wearing like a wrist. It was a wristband, but they're really like, you know, Apple Watches, where it is monitoring their sleep patterns, monitoring, you know, their stress levels. Probably some stressful times there. And then just their behavior, both psychological and like physiological behavior as well, just to help the crew on the ground to understand, you know, what is happening, when were the stress level high among everyone, one over the other, what were the circumstances. The second one that they were working on is called immune biomarkers. So astronauts, before they go to space, they obviously take their blood, saliva, urine, all of that, and then obviously also when they come back. But they don't have refrigerators on these kinds of spacecrafts. So then what do you do when you want to have something that was part of the mission or during the mission? So they have these things, they're like strips, like, you know how we have litmus paper and things like that? It's basically a strip like that where they just put their saliva, and it doesn't need to go into a refrigerator or anything. It's like a booklet. They close it and then bring it back to Earth, and then scientists use that to kind of study their body. I don't know how. I'm not a bio person by any background. Last time I took biology, we were grade 12. But I think that's really cool. The other one, which I thought was really cool, was actually the one on the top, the avatar. And if you have been reading news from Western, there was an article about this week as well. So this is a tiny, probably the size of like a USB key. It's organ on a chip. So what they do is they take blood work from the astronauts, take out cells from the blood, and they put it on this chip. It acts like a tissue, but on a small scale. And this is taken when they are here on Earth. And then when they come back, you know, they see what their body reacted to versus this was reacting to. And this is really important because apparently when they have done this on ISS, they have found that astronauts who come back after being on the space station for a while actually have higher chances of getting chickenpox and shingles. So their virus activates while being in space. So they really wanted to study what happens to their bodies, because you do not want to send someone to the moon for 6 months and come back and be like, oh, now you're suffering from shingles. So they want to study more. So they basically send these chips with the astronauts. And then fourth one, again, I talked about radiation. They really wanted to study the radiation impacts on their body. So they had 6 sensors on the spacecraft itself. So the Orion, which is the spacecraft that they were in, there were 6 different sensors in different places. And then each had a dosimeter, which basically gives you reading for the radiation in their pockets as well, which I didn't know until I searched for this. And the idea is that they keep it with themselves and hoping at sometime they will have a bigger spacecraft for them, because they would want to know if the numbers on one side higher than the other side, vice versa, right? So that's what they were testing. And I think Germany provided that sensors, etc. It's super cool. And then the 5th one was really just the standard. All the work that they have been doing on ISS, doing the same things the astronauts, like before and after, not during, because during was done using the immune biomarkers. So pretty cool. Okay, finally, we're done with Artemis II. What's next? Like I said, a few weeks before the Artemis II, the new NASA administrator is like, yeah, we're not going to land on the moon in Artemis 3. Change of plans. We're going to demonstrate, okay, how we will do the landing without actually landing, but around Earth. And so I'll talk about the mission in a second for, a little bit, because I think that's really exciting. So think about the POX ops that I talked about, but in a more extended scale. And then in the year after, so this is now 2028, 2027 is Artemis 3, 2028 is Artemis 4, where they finally will have a landing on the moon. And then after that, Artemis 5 and beyond will be regulars, like just going to New York or, I don't know, going across the world at that point, because they'll be landing a mission or two every year. That's their plan. So what is this Artemis 3? Demonstrate critical systems for lunar landing. Like I said, not much is on their website. But they did announce earlier this month 4 astronauts will be going on this next mission. We have Andre Douglas, you might recognize him. He was the backup for the Artemis II crew. Luca here, he's an Italian astronaut. So after Canada, another international representation, we have Isa. This one is Frank Rubio, if I remember correct. And then this one is the commander, and I'm sorry, I don't know his names. I will have to look it up. I did try to remember. But one of the cool things about this crew is that Luca, all of them have to be into space except Andre. So we again have someone who is new, gonna be going into space first time. Luca is actually someone who has done spacewalk on the ISS and has had very scary time where a lot of the water was starting to pull up in his helmet, and he has to kind of go back, like rush back to ISS. I'm pretty sure I'm like making it sound like really bad, but it was really bad because it was kind of filling up to like he couldn't even really see. So dangerous. So he's good with danger. And so for them, the idea really is, and I don't think I have a map because they have not yet released how that's going to work. But what I'm going to say is that there are 2 companies that have been contracted to actually send basically a module to space that will eventually be the one that will land them on the moon. So one is SpaceX, okay, and the other one is Boeing. Blue Origin, sorry, Blue Origin. Blue Origin. It's like, wait, there's a Boeing in there. It's Blue Origin. But if you have seen in the news last month, their tester flight blew up on the launch pad. So I don't know how it's going to happen in 2027. These are my doubts on, I don't know, they say we're going to go in 2027. Because the idea is they launched the Blue Origin. It's supposed to go around for 2 weeks. Astronauts launch on the SLS. Then they meet up with the Blue Origin. Okay, they dock. This is where the POX-OP testing comes in. They dock. They're supposed to be there for like a couple of days. Separates. SpaceX sends their stuff. They dock, and then, so like, okay, cool, it's working. And then they come back. That's going to be 2 weeks. So now they're hitting that 21-day kind of closer to that 14-day mark they will hit. But this is all just what was said in the press briefing. Trying to find documentation for how that's going to work. So I'm a little skeptical on when that's going to happen, if it's going to happen in 2027 or not. But the idea is one of those companies will do great, and then those are the ones who are going to be the landing crew or going to help supply that on Artemis 4, which currently is slated for 2028. Okay, and then 2029 and beyond, once a year or a couple times a year, they're hoping to then have a moon base. So starting Artemis 5, they're going to start sending things, which is going to be habitable, habitats where astronauts can live, and, systems that will be needed for astronauts to be on the surface for a few months at a time. I don't think they can be there for like very long amount of time, just because radiation, and it's not ISS. If something happens, we can send things there and we can, come back, but this is a few days away. So we'll see. I'm very skeptical about this is going to happen in the next 3 years, but we'll see.
They have more than one bath for that.
Oh yeah, space toilet. There were a lot of issues with the space toilet on Artemis II. They are yet to figure out the exact cause for it. But we are told that it was Christina Cook who fixed it, because she was the only person who's like, I'm gonna fix it, you guys be glad of it. And I think they tried different things to try to fix it. Initially, they thought it was just too cold because what they do is they take all the wastage and then they throw it out in space, but it was not going. So they were like, oh, we cannot go to the bathroom. That wasn't going out. So they're like, oh, maybe let's orient the spacecraft to the sun and maybe it will heat up if there's some ice there or whatever. And then that will let stuff out. Didn't really help. So they think that there is something in the pipes that is generating some kind of, they also put smell of vapor that they couldn't recognize. So they're like, there's something in there that is reacting to being in space that hasn't happened before, and that is clogging the pipe that is supposed to throw the waste out.
So I heard they're bringing a plunger for Artemis.
It's going to be 2 weeks. It's going to be worse. It's going to be 2 weeks, more people, and then they have to dock with different places. So,
Do you have those flows out there?
no. So, anyways, I will stop there. I think I talked a lot, so I apologize for going a little bit over my time. But oh, we have a question.
Wouldn't it be far better to work with China? China's been out there so many times. NASA's so far behind. I mean, like, China will have a city built by the time these guys are here. Like, not to sound bitter, but I'm weird. You know?
It's very hard to get people to cooperate with other people that they don't like. I mean, I have to say one thing, like, yes, this is kind of advancing US's idea of what they want to do while being on the moon, but there are so many countries that are part of the Artemis Accord now. It has obviously taken years and they're still doing it. There are more countries
Who had the lander that tipped over?
China's put quite a few.
Yeah, there are lots of landers that have been there, even private companies have had landers.
Over.
Yeah, they put a bunch of them on. So it's one of them.
Yeah, there are a lot of different countries and many private companies that have sent landers and rovers on the moon, like they're there. Only a couple of years ago, there was one that was successfully that had included some Canadian contribution as well. But getting countries, I mean, I'm still surprised that Russia and US still work together on sending astronauts and ISIS still exists. So, we only have a few more years before ISS retired. But yeah, it's very hard to get. It's a competition for them.
It's who wants the resources.
Exactly.
It'd be nice if they work together because it's so fun.
I think a whole world, if they just work together.
Yeah.
Is what
I find it very frustrating.
Yeah.
It's always this.
Yeah, I use the same bathroom, you can't get one here.
Yeah.
Just to follow up to
And
your
then
point,
Bob,
like, because like the key thing is like, the question is why are we going back to the moon now, right? And if we could have gone back to the moon 20 years ago, we could have waited 20 more years. And it comes into like this great power competition. In fact, the United States doesn't want to share national security related secrets to get too close to China.
Yeah.
But the other thing that people don't generally realize is there's actually a race to get back to the moon. There's a reason for that race. Because China, Russia, and the United States all want to get to one particular spot at the same time.
Yep.
Because one of the things that's come out of all the LRO imagery and all the other stuff is at the South Pole, there's something called the eternal peaks of light. So the moon, if you put a base on the moon, the problem is you're going to have 2 weeks of day and 2 weeks of night.
Yep.
And so you can't do that. But down at the South Pole, there's actually mountains that extend down just enough that if you put the solar array there and you rotate it, you can get solar power all the time. So the critical issue here, and why they're all going back to the moon now, is that happens along Shackleton Ridge, which is just part of the rim of Shackleton Crater at the South Pole. And whoever gets there first gets the prime real estate, because it's not a lot of real estate. And so why the United States wants to get there first is because they want that Shackleton Ridge. They're probably going to do it unless China has something going on that we're unaware of, which they may well be because they'd like to get there first.
2030 or 2028 or 2030, they're saying.
Yeah, so but whoever gets to Shackleton Ridge first gets the best campsite. That's kind of what it boils down to. That's why it's happening now, because it's sort of there was a paper in Space Policy back in about 2016, 2017, where somebody talked about like the Eternal Peaks of Light and sort of some of those issues.
Yeah.
And it was sort of speculative, but I think a light bulb went on in a lot of people's minds when this sort of was demonstrated that was possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's really what it is. It's a big car competition all over again, and whoever gets there first, like I say, they get the best real estate. Whoever gets there second, like they get second best.
Also, I think the other thing is in the South Pole, there are regions where like water ice has been found.
That's
Yeah,
what I've heard
so
too.
that is the other kind of main driver
Yeah.
is like they want to get there, they want to use that for propulsion, etc., rather than having to carry, water from here.
That's right, because you can't,
Yeah.
you're not gonna load up a rocket with water and send it to the moon. So,
Yeah.
so Clementine in 1995, that was where they had looked at some of the craters on the South Pole, and they're always in shadow. And they realized that there actually might be water ice in those craters.
Yeah, that's what I
So,
heard.
so then what they did was they dropped a projectile into those craters to shatter it, and then they imaged it with a spectrograph, and then they realized it was water ice. So now at the South Pole, you have power and you have water,
Yep.
and that is critical, and that is the impetus to go back to the moon.
Yeah. It's so sad that we can't work together as a species, we have to take our stuff like that too.
Well, one good thing about it is nobody can claim ownership to it.
Well,
Now.
Well.
Yeah.
I know Bob had something
Yeah,
to add.
I just, actually, Dale just brought up the point that I was trying to figure out how you could land in a perpetually shadowed crater at the South Pole that is never sees sunlight and have power in order for the astronauts to get out of their spacecraft and do work.
Yeah.
And I think he's answered it by saying, well, if it's a shallow crater, you might be able to erect solar panels that
Yeah.
can get, continuous sunshine. Okay, that answers it. My concern was the SpaceX Starship space landing system and the Blue Origin's landing vehicle. But watch the videos on both of these on my computer, and I honestly cannot imagine the SpaceX Starship, which is a huge, tall vehicle, landing on the moon and not tipping over. And to get the astronauts out of the vehicle, you have an elevator going down 60 feet to the ground. Now, if the elevator breaks down, how do they get back into the ship? Do they have a rope ladder?
Probably.
I mean, climbing up a ladder with those bulky spacesuits.
Yeah.
I have my doubts.
Yeah.
And that's one thing. And also the number of tests that are being done, especially by SpaceX, just to get the vehicle into space. Never mind rendezvousing and with the Orion spacecraft once in orbit. And then they have to have what, 8 to a dozen or more, maybe as many as 18 refueling missions before it even leaves Earth orbit to go to the moon and rendezvous with the Orion spacecraft. Now, 18 launches. NASA's tightest launch schedule was in 1985. I think they launched the space shuttle 8 or 9 times.
Yeah.
And that ended in January '86 with the loss of the Challenger.
Mhm.
I mean, the idea of launching rockets the size of Saturn V's, 18 of them, boom, 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 to refuel. I mean, this doesn't sound realistic at all. It just doesn't sound. And I mean, the number of explosions and failures that are going on with the SpaceX, Starship, makes me really wonder. I mean, landing on the moon in 2028, I'll be happy if they land on the moon at all.
That's why I
You
said
know.
quotation. Like for me, even just doing the one in 2027, where you have 2 different ones that are, one is going before, then you have the SLS launching, and then you have the SpaceX one launching, and then they're rendezvous. Like that to me is still also like far, especially because Blue Origin's stuff blew up on the launch pad, and now they need to reconstruct the whole thing. And this is like what we're halfway through 2026.
Yeah.
So and they're saying early to mid 2027. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. But that's me. I don't work at SpaceX, so I have no idea. But
Yeah, and then the other thing is solar flares. It's interesting that Blue Origins has placed the fuel tanks on top and the crew down below.
yeah,
So they can step out on the moon very easily without having a big long ladder. The fuel tanks probably protect them from solar flares if they occur all around the moon. It just occurred to me that that's, an accidental consequence of their configuration, whether that was deliberate part of their idea or not, I don't know.
That was some of the restrictions that increased the radiation.
That's what I was gonna like say. Like, I don't know what the impacts of like the radiation would be on.
Is any restriction that's the reason radiation?
Yeah. So. I have no idea. I'm not an expert in that area, so I have no idea about that, but yeah. So for me, it's
Steve raised his hand online.
Oh, sorry, I didn't even see that.
Yeah, Steve has a comment. Now, I don't know if we can hear Steve on the speakers.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Give me a second, Steve,
Oh,
here with,
shall I go out of here so everyone can see?
Can you hear me now?
Go ahead
Hello?
and try and talk, Steve.
I am trying to talk.
Yeah, we've got everything muted here.
Let me actually turn this maybe.
It's gotta come through this machine, I think.
Hello? Hello?
Right.
Can you hear me? Hello? Test, 1, 2, 3.
Oh, okay.
Try again,
Test.
Steve.
1, 2, 3. Can you hear me?
Just barely, give me a second.
I don't think it's plugged in, right?
It is plugged in. It is.
Try again.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me?
The inside turned on. Our box. Inside the door.
Test, 1, 2, 3. Hello, me? Hello? Hello?
At an air cable?
Hello? 1, 2, 3. Hello? Hello?
Yeah, we can like barely hear.
There we go. TV speaker.
Hi now.
Try now.
Hello? 1, 2, 3.
Yes, we can hear you.
You can hear me now?
We
Yes.
can hear you now.
Okay, fantastic. Parshati, can you go to your presentation near the beginning and
Okay.
put up the entire Earth picture that you showed earlier?
Okay. Are you able to see the screen?
Yes, I can see it now.
Okay, cool. Let me.
Because there's an interesting observation that many people don't really realize, and it has to do with, I guess, a certain degree of earth sciences. But because of Artemis's specific position in space, some, let's call it lay astronomers, people who have that's the picture there, don't realize that the northern aurora happens at the exact same time as the southern aurora, and both of them are on the screen at the simultaneously. And most people will look at it because an awful lot of our aurora pictures that we see from space are taken usually from the ISS, which is in essentially a low Earth orbit. So we don't see both of these at the same time. We'll just see them going through essentially the waves of what's happening. So this picture here actually shows the north and south aurora. And I can attest that I've been on the South Island in New Zealand where the aurora australis basically flared up. And I was thinking at the time, wow, that's really neat, because knowing full well that I live in Canada and at the same time, there's the northern borealis, the northern lights essentially happening at the exact same time. But this picture is only possible from having somebody a lot further out in space where you can see the aurora both at the same time.
Yeah, this wouldn't be possible with the space station because it's just too close to Earth. You could see north or south, but not together. So,
Yeah.
awesome.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay.
Let's see another person's hand up there, no bigger.
Mhm.
There was.
What's that, Craig?
There was somebody else had their hand up. Eric?
Oh, who else had their hand up?
It was Eric.
Let's see if we can.
Eric is saying no.
Give me a second. Eric, did you want to speak?
No, sorry.
Okay,
Okay.
good seeing you.
Yeah, he's just outside here.
Yes. Thank you for letting me.